Welcome to Diversity Conversations, where we engage in thought-provoking dialogue to identify leadership solutions to today's most challenging conflicts. Stream live each week, Saturday 9:30 a.m. to 11 a.m. Hosted by Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Strategist and CEOs Eric Ellis and Tommy Lewis. Join us and add your voice to this engaging diversity conversation.
Good morning, Greater Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky, the United States, and the world. My name is Eric Ellis. I'm the president and CEO of Integrity Development Corporation. I'm joined this morning by my good friend and brother,
Tommy Lewis, president and CEO of Make It Plain Consulting. Good morning, Eric.
Tommy about to make it plain today.
Yes, sir.
About to make it plain today. Tommy, it's good to be with you, man. How was your week?
Good to be with you too, Eric. Week was good. It was a bit of a short week. I had to, started the week on Tuesday, Wednesday, and really just executed task after task after task, and then through meeting after meeting after meeting. And so at the end of the week, Eric, I'm so glad that it's Friday. That it's Saturday. Good grief, that it's Saturday. So I was racing to the finish line of the week. The week was good,
right?
But sometimes, Eric, just we just need to get to the weekend.
Oh my
get to
goodness,
the weekend,
bro.
And that's how my week has been.
Well, Tommy knows firsthand that that's how my week was. I remember my mother used to say, "I don't know if I'm coming or going." That explains the whole week.
I get it.
At times, I didn't know if I was coming or going. I showed up in a meeting with Tommy. I said, "Okay, y'all, I'm not really prepared. I have fallen behind on the job, and yet I'm trying to hold on to everything." And everybody's coming in, give me. No, I gotta get around to it. Just leave me alone. Let me die here by myself. I'm literally drowning. And yet I'm holding on. I mean, that's just the definition of insanity.
Yeah.
Is doing the same thing and looking for a different result. So I had to then start making provisions for letting go. So let me just speak to you all in our community that have gotten up from the start. I would suggest to you that too many of us have been raised with the value system of, I'm going to depend on myself and I'm going to get this done. And I'm going to say to you that that is often what we might even do with our faith. We don't put it in the hands of God. I got this. I'm going to get it done. And I'm going to suggest to you that many of the answers that you're seeking, many of the solutions that you're looking for will come as a result of you letting go and inviting other people in to assist you, to help you. We would drown, many of us, completely before we would ask for help. Tommy, what does that mean to you, man? This notion of us as men, us as business leaders, oftentimes, too often, feeling like we've got to hold on to everything.
So initially, I'm thinking pride and ego, Eric. Men have, and women, but men have tremendous egos. And the ego is driven by one's, self-image, how they see themselves, which can be informed by other men and other environmental situations of privilege and empowerment, etc. And so when men are competitive and they're winning regularly, the ego is fueled. And those around you may say, hey, you can do anything. And that ego can lead to a power complex, Eric, that I have to control or own whatever I do. In fact, I create my own success. That's what ego is saying.
Yep.
In reality, we do not create our own success. We always have to have other people, right? Or other things. So if it's a business, from a business perspective, we don't just walk into business saying, I'm doing business with you now.
Right.
We have to have someone on the other side to kind of buy what we're selling and develop a relationship. And so what I find for the most part and I work on my own ego,
Yep.
I have ego that's very high in certain areas of my life, Eric. And then in other areas, I'm very humble about it. But in the areas that I'm very humble is where I have experienced the most failure. And that's why I say so. In business, when we experience failure, it will be humbling. And not to go down this path too far, even with some of these top leaders that we have in this country that may have never been told no or just bullied their way through what they identify as success, I believe they're going through a season of humiliation.
Okay.
And so it will show up when that ego and that pride is literally crushed and the emperor has no clothes on.
Okay.
I'm just going to put that out there.
Okay. On this particular question, I'm going to go in the exact opposite way of what Tommy just did.
Yep.
Now, I'm going to say right from the outset that both of these, I believe, are true. Tommy said part of the reason why we hold on to things is because of our ego and pride. I will also say, and I think I'll get him to agree, even though I'm going in the exact opposite direction, that we also hold on to things because of what I'm calling our fragility of confidence, that we can withstand mistakes in our businesses. And so it's a fear sometimes, Tommy, that if this isn't right, then I could lose. And people are there's so many folks out there that are pulling for me to lose that I can't afford to not hit this at a certain level. So that's the pride part that I got to do it. But the fear part, the fragility of confidence is that I can't make mistakes. And so, so a lot of times I just told somebody yesterday, I said, look, my philosophy as a company, our philosophy as a family is make as many mistakes as you want to internally. No problem. We try not to make any externally. I said, the reality is we have, and we live by those. But Tommy, what do you think about the notion of fragility of confidence?
I think that's an excellent concept. And it's, for me, that's spot on. That's exactly what I think why we hold on. Eric, that was well said. The human psyche and leadership psyche can be very fragile, right? We are kind of glass dolls.
Right.
And sometimes it's just a little pebble that creates that crack.
And it's not without evidence.
Yep.
It's not without evidence.
Indeed.
That mess up.
Say it.
So that's not without evidence. We're not just making that up. The problem is that there are people that can do some of these things better than I can. That's the ego part.
Yep.
And so what I've got to do is spend the time to understand what people's gifts are and to bring people up to speed. Example, yesterday, my brother came in and we were working on something. I was working on it by myself and it was okay. He works on it by himself. It's okay. But when he came in here and we got on the same page working on something, it was like, what the twins, boom.
The activate.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And we were able to deliver something together that was better than what we can do apart. And so what I want to say to you all, community, is that it's important for you to let some things go, to partner with people so that you can allow people to help you. I'll give you this too, because in the day and time that we're living in right now, Tommy, people are up and down in terms of survival, man. There are challenges. There are economic challenges that are affecting us.
Yeah.
And there's two things that I want to encourage the community to try to avoid. One is being the person that's always in need and always just weighing people down with requests and pressure that they owe you something. So I want you to try to avoid that. But I also want you to try to avoid never asking for help and really silently dying. If you are a friend of mine It's one of my brothers, T. Cooley, LG Wise. There's a few people in my life that are so close to me that anything at all, I don't want him to be in need in a big way and not call my number, because I have such respect for him and love for him that, and Terry and LG Wise and many others. But I want to be that person that says, if I got $1, you got 50 cents, because I know his integrity. I know his character, but I said to just casual friendships that if you need $100, I always got $100. Always.
Yeah.
For anybody that's in close proximity to me, if you're in a desperate place, you can always reach out to me for that 100. Tommy, how many times has 100 been important hand?
It's been very important. Believe it or not. Just 100. That $100 not only as gap money,
right.
It is, I think it can be freeing,
right?
Not just $1,
right?
But 100 times.
Yeah,
that.
Right.
So when
gas money,
yep,
groceries, you can eat with it.
Yep, it can be freeing, and it can give you, from a mental mindset perspective, it can give you reprieve to be able to backtrack, get in the cave, get your strategy together, and come back out. Just $100.
Just $100.
Right. So, and from my perspective, and I know this from you too, Eric, we're not minimizing a dime, $1, $50, 100, or 1,000, or whatever. There's something about that C note, right? That $100 bill, that's a little more than just $99. Right. So in marketing and retail, they want to sell us things at 99 cents, $99. But the C note, $100.
Whoops.
Yep.
It still spins either way.
Either way. It has a different feel. Some of us have hundreds of thousands of $100. Some of us need that gap money of $100 bill.
This does it some weeks.
So
some
now,
weeks this does right here.
So I would like to invite and encourage our audience. When you think of $100, two things. One, what might you receive in return when you give $100 that is not currency?
Okay.
In other words, if you give a $100 bill, what might you receive in return that is not currency? It is not another $100 or plus or minus. What might you give? I share that because I do think there's tremendous power in being available as a friend to be able to give.
Right.
And Eric, when a friend or family member gives to me, my integrity tells me I will be there for you. It may take me some time to repay the 100, but I'm there for you beyond the $100 return in investment. So you've literally made an investment in my spirit. Just like tithing. Tithing is not always getting returned back, one-to-one. It is the integrity to have faith in the relationship with either a human being, or in tithing's case, with God. That's in the return on investment is the ability to give 100. Because the tithing was done years ago. The prayers was done years ago. This is good word here, Eric.
This is good word, because we're saying something to you right now, because it's a lonely world that we live in oftentimes. And sometimes you might feel like you're all by yourself. I'm saying to you that the way that I avoid that is by, you've heard people say that if you want to have a friend, show yourself friendly. And so the people that are closest to me, I'm really saying to them that we do not, what we have is plastic, unless when you are in need, you call me. You don't call me, you don't really have nothing. And I'm going to tell you what, in order to survive the craziness that we're living in right now,
Say it.
I need to be able to go to sleep at night. When I lay my head down, I know if everything crashes in, there's a person or two that I can call in the world.
Yes, sir.
That's going to be there for me. And that makes me feel a little bit like Christmas every day. And I'm saying to casual acquaintances that I don't want anybody to starve or not make it. We've got to make sure that we are making ourselves available to one another because the world will have us thinking that we can simply just live in isolation. We're going to take this theme, we're going to translate it in just a minute to what happens as a nation if you begin to overly focus on isolationist thinking, where you just look out for yourselves, or being a part of the world and aligning yourself with your allies. Let's just look at what a couple of our community members have said to us. Thank you. I think this is Lydia. Those $100 mean a lot of things. Yes, the money, but what it represents is the relief, support, and love.
Yeah.
And I'm just so grateful to be able to do that. And what I say, I think I shared this with Tommy. I've shared this here before, that at the end of the day, money's not everything, but money can be very helpful to people. There's another point that I was going to say that has gotten away from me. I'll come back to it. But just being there for others, I think is great.
Yeah, Eric, I think there's a lot of power in giving back. Whatever that might be. It might be your money. It might be your time. It might be your attention. It may be simply your prayer, giving back to humanity through your prayer.
Yep.
Your thoughts, your considerations. And so I would like to invite us to just remember just a few years ago when we were in this global pandemic called the coronavirus, right? And COVID-19, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we as human beings were isolated from one another for the most part.
That's good, Tommy.
We found ourselves in our homes. Sometimes it was just us. Sometimes we had our nuclear family. And some of us began to think about our extended families who we were not in contact with. And so we started to use social media and telephone calls and texts just to connect with loved ones and friends that we were not in close proximity. And that global pandemic forced us to recognize why and how we need to be communal. Eric,
that's good.
In 2023, we may have gotten comfortable again
quickly
and fallen back to, hey, I haven't seen my brother, my sister, my cousin, my friend, my neighbor. I haven't even seen my neighbor. And they'll be there. We need to get back, not into a pandemic, but in the mindset of community.
I'm going to come back to that. I remember what I thought, I forgot earlier, but I want to come right back to this. What got out of my mind that I wanted to share with you was a piece of wisdom that God shared with me. He basically said to me that, Eric, it's easy sometimes to be the giver. And actually, giving sometimes can even be caught up in pride and ego. He shared with me that we oftentimes need to experience being in need and having to ask for help from others, because in that lies the formula and the humility that then you can utilize to be a giver. That if you only are a giver and you've never had to humble yourself to ask for help and to receive, then your giving is almost not worth. And so that's something that I want our community to be thinking of. And then what Tommy has said about the global pandemic, it happened, and then George Floyd's death. So let's look at George Floyd's death. After George Floyd's death, corporations pledged $50 billion, just a few short years, right, Tommy?
Yep.
A few short years ago, $50 billion they pledged, we're going to get after this. Less than 2% of that was invested. And now DEI, all those dollars and all those efforts are being trashed. I mean, it's crazy what we're going through. The same kind of memory loss happens around the pandemic. We were in the midst of it. I'll never forget this, Tommy, that my son Eric came home, but because of the pandemic, he couldn't come in the house. He literally came from California to Cincinnati, and he stood outside of our house, and we looked at him through a screen. And I remember Judy just being all choked up, you know, that her oldest son was not even able to come into the house safely. We've forgotten those things. And because we're told negativity 24/7, if we're not careful, we get caught up in things that really don't really matter.
Don't really matter, Eric.
Tommy, let's look at making a pivot here. And I'm going to ask you, well, let's see if our community, what they've said. Exactly, investment in our spirit. And then one of the greatest gifts is, Eric, to have the courage to ask for help, guidance, and support. And it's been so rewarding in so many aspects.
Indeed. That's good word.
Yeah. All right, Tommy, let's look at, we want to talk about where we're finding ourselves right now as a nation. Congress is at war. This is probably the most impotent Congress that we've ever seen, not doing anything, just really fighting each other round the clock, and each of them coming forward with a sense of arrogance in their position and steadfastness in their position while we are losing as a country. We're seeing right now that there's the funds to sort of help out on the border in Ukraine, in the Ukrainian war, for Israel, and for food and all the things that are needed for Palestinians. Those things are all being held up. But here's a question that I want to start with. Many people on both sides of the aisle, Tommy, are suggesting that America shouldn't be focused on, worried about what happens around the world until we pay for all the needs that we have here in this country. And there are people, Republicans and Democrats, who are believing that we shouldn't be investing in these things around the world. We should be using all of that for ourselves. What are your thoughts about that, Tom?
Well, I have three things that come to mind, Eric. First, when we look at economies, particularly the world economy, our country, the three countries that make up our continent, United States, Mexico, and Canada, and other countries across the world, we are indiscriminately connected with one another through services, products, raw materials, manufacturing, distribution. In America, there are very few global products that we unilaterally and solely produce from start to finish.
Right.
And if said service or product is to be distributed throughout the world, then we need the world. And so with that being said, when there are conflicts, human and or political conflicts in different parts of the world, the ecosystem of our life and livelihood depends on us to protect and invest in the entire ecosystem. So to narrow that down, I don't know which way to go, on with the funding to particular countries. But my question is, what's the benefit? I'm not talking about the benefit that the average citizen has read about or heard about.
Right.
I'm talking about the real benefit that said country offers to us and why the United States considers them an ally in the first place.
Right.
Or a country that we consider to be a foe or maybe an adversary. So investing in the protections of the ecosystem from a domestic and international kind of economic system makes sense. Because if the chickens will always come home to roost, Eric, what we don't do in protection of us, right, will come home to bite us.
Right.
Yeah, those are my thoughts. And then my second and third point was baked into that first point of I need to understand a little bit more and better about the why. Why is Ukraine, for example, being supported, and why other countries may not, even with what's happening with Israel and Hamas, and those are international wars that we need to care for.
Right.
And we have some domestic challenges as well.
Right. And so I would say that you hit the nail on the head when you talked about our dependence on the world. And because we are ethnocentric and nationalistic in our view, we foolishly in this country believe that everything we need, we develop.
Right.
We don't need anybody else, but we actually do. If you look at, let's look at what has happened to the Palestinians in Gaza. Right now, there was a time when they were so locked in that no trucks were getting through with the supplies they needed to survive. And then at one point we saw 100 or 200 trucks that they were going to say that they were going to let in, and to feed all these people, to give all the needs that they need, medical needs and all of that. They said what they were used to, I think, was thousands of trucks coming in every day. And so when you cut off outside of ourselves, thousands of trucks it was, now you're talking about eking out 100 trucks or 200 trucks. Literally, the people are going to starve to death and die.
Mm-hmm.
So in other words, there's this isolation actually causes us to die. If you looked at our dependence on the border, so everybody is simplistically saying that let's just close off the borders. Actually, we need those borders. I mean, billions of dollars are made in those border cities on this side, are made because of what's coming into this country. And so we actually cannot survive closing the borders for an extended amount of time.
Right.
We can't survive. So we actually need them. Now, as we look at right now, the question for me is, if we look at Ukraine, why support Ukraine? I think that we as a global leader, you can choose not to be a global leader. And then you can just let maybe China run the world, or let Russia run the world, where they shut off all media, all free media shut off.
Yeah.
You think we're in trouble now.
Right.
If there was no freedom of the press, where would we be? The government could kill anybody it wanted. It could do anything it wanted in complete absolution. I mean, they'd be absolved of any accountability or responsibility. So one of the things that we fight for as a democracy is sort of freedom of press and the power of the will of the people to determine what happens within the country. In Ukraine, they are democratic and they believe in those values. Russia does not. And so we are seeking to support all countries that are believe in democratic values, because we believe better things happen in those countries. We also recognize that Russia is one of our enemies. They are constantly and perpetually doing things to harm us and to bring us down. Let's be clear about what their agenda is. Tom, I'm going to ask you a rhetorical question to some extent. What is it that would cause a nation to turn on its allies and embrace its enemies? So Russia, China, North Korea, Hungary, those are countries that are not out for our good.
Yeah.
They're out to take us down.
Yep.
So why would we turn our backs on Poland and France and England in order to bolster a stronger relationship with countries that just as soon us not be on the map?
So one thing, Eric, we all have to remember that when we're talking about supporting or not supporting countries, we're talking about people making decisions
Right.
to support the people
Right.
who represents the individual countries.
Right.
I want to be clear there. It's not the land that has agreed to partner or not.
Right.
So when a country that's run by people decide to go against the ally, it's because of people making the decision. That's one. Two, there may be some lost historical context, right? Or forgotten context.
Right.
So sometimes the people who are making these decisions to turn on an ally may not fully understand or want to understand the historical relationship.
Right.
Right. That's two. Three, it's not about the relationship. It's about me and ours, what we get.
Right.
So we'll bite the hand that feeds us, because at the end of the day, we're the power of the world, and we can feed whoever. We'll bite the hand that feeds us. Two, we are the superpower, and everyone else is beneath us. And so we can turn on our enemies, we can turn on our allies, etc. We can do literally whatever we want to do. The reality is we can't. No, because other countries that are run by people, they have long memory as well. So they remember when they were not an ally of the United States and then became an ally of the United States through conflict, wars and battles and things like that, through Cold Wars or other calmness in our relationship. And then
mutual interest,
and then it blows up. So those are my thoughts. Great question.
Right.
What do you?
I'll say to you that as we look at Ukraine, we need access to Ukraine. In other words, if there's ever this existential threat, which Russia is to us, you're going to need someplace to get access into them. So you need a free Ukraine so that you have spaces to put all your missiles and all kinds of other things to gain access to them, given this hostility that we find ourselves in. I don't think that we can afford to allow them to lose, because China's next. They're looking at what they're going to do, to countries around them, just claim more territory. And eventually people start claiming us. They're buying up property in the United States. And so it just doesn't make any sense for us it just makes no sense at all for us to put a bunch of pressure on our allies and none on our enemies. That makes no sense at all. I agree with Nikki Haley when she says that President Biden has not made the case for why the United States should be investing in other countries. But I'll say to you that you have this obligation, if you're going to keep together a team of allies that you can depend on to help you in tragic times, then you're going to have to invest in that relationship. If you don't invest in the relationship, you don't have those relationships, and nobody can make it on their own, because everybody else, if they start clearing the board and gathering all of our allies on their side, and then our allies have to reflect on, they wouldn't be owned if we would have been loyal to them. Now you can be taken over and enslaved by these global bullies.
Eric, I always, in these conversations, I always have two different thoughts. Always. And you know me, and my audience knows me. I'm not terribly political because I'm not a politician.
Right.
I do not make those decisions. So one part of my head is saying, when we or others talk about the global and world events, it seems so big to me,
right?
Because I personally have no power to influence anything, right? So oftentimes I don't really talk about things I don't really have any power to influence, or I don't think that whatever decision is made will impact me in my life.
Right.
Sometimes that's, kind of short thinking, because sometimes those things that do happen globally do end up impacting my life. Right. Such as there's a war in Jerusalem or Israel and Hamas, and I wasn't really connected with that at all. I know some background in history, but most recently I heard and learned that you have a lot of the oil companies who have to ship their goods, not only oil, around the Cape of Hope of Africa. So it's taking upwards of 3 to 6 months, which increases the price and which will impact us. So that's it. Sure, I can connect all the dots to land on that. So my point is, on this side of the fence, we talk about these things like with Hamas or with Russia. I'm not going to Russia. No one from Russia knows me. They may be watching this, but they don't really know me. Right. So that's one thing. The other thing is, if the concept of think globally, act locally. Right. So I do understand thinking big, right? And then coming down to say, how does this impact me?
Right.
So I'm saying that to our community members who think the same, like, okay, Eric and Tommy are talking about this, and sometimes they talk about this, whatever. How does this impact me?
Right.
Can you help?
Yeah. So let me just talk about Russia for a minute. So we as Americans are we're the fiercest fighters in the world, and we're the softest nation in the world. We have literally been pampered so much, Tommy, that we just saw. We saw we were soft. AT&T went down yesterday, day before yesterday, and oh my, soft, just soft. So anything that you do to us, we crumble quick because we're so used to the niceties of the world. And so, so Russia, a more desperate and gritty country, they look at our softness and they say, man, you can take this thing down in no time flat. We're so soft as a nation that we have the luxury of Congress being completely dysfunctional and most of the nation not even care. I mean, they don't have to talk about real stuff because they're soft. So they just bicker. They bicker back and forth. But what happens is that an enemy watching our softness from the outside says, I want to go play in that sandbox. They are the current day Rome.
Oh, yeah.
They're laying back with grapes and wine. That's what Tommy and I are doing this morning. Grapes and orange juice. That's our wine.
Yeah, right. Say it, Eric.
Yeah, we're doing grapes and orange juice. Chilling, kicking back, enjoying each other's company. And they say, I think we can take that thing down. It looks like, to me, the Titanic. And so Russia, while we're playing footsies with them and saying maybe they'd be nice to us. Let's see what Russia's done. So a Republican who's a chairman of, I think it's the Energy Committee or one of the, maybe defense. He's heading up one of those committees. He says to us a week ago, hey, there's something crazy that Russia is trying to do to get at us. He literally broke ranks and announced to us that there was something that Russia was doing that could be an existential threat. Well, what would that be? Well, Russia's working on some technology that would go into, the outer space and literally be able to attack our satellites that would disrupt our ability to then utilize our nuclear capabilities and everything to defend ourselves. They're literally then working on technology that would allow them to take out our satellites in space in ways that would make it harder for us to defend ourselves. Is that not an aggressive existential threat? It absolutely is. What else is Russia doing? Russia's up to its old tricks again. It's election interference. That's what Russia does. They look over here and they say, America's soft. The really softness of America, the underbelly softness, that nice tissue under there that hadn't seen the light of day, that soft part underneath your stomach. That's what they're coming after. They're saying one of their greatest weaknesses are cultural weaknesses, specifically racial weaknesses, but political weaknesses. And so they said that they fight each other and they look for anything they can use to take down the other party. In other words, they're no longer together interested in the good of their country. They're fat and sassy.
Good.
So now you can just go get that soft underbelly and give them some information to do the other side in. And so what they do then, Russia's looking at what's in their best interest. And right now they see it as Trump. He's their friend. So they're coming after Biden. So what do? They have a spy, an informant, sort of say to the FBI that they had some goods on Joe Biden taking $5 to $10 million. So they put out that report and they give it to the Republicans. The Republicans who are looking for that fuel to say that this Hunter Biden, this Biden, thing has risen to the level that we got to impeach President Biden. And then all of a sudden, we learned this week that that person was lying the whole way, fabricated a story, was working in conjunction with Russian spies to feed us misinformation that people would take throughout their party and throughout the conservative ecosystem and literally be impeaching the president of the United States. That's the impact of an enemy disrupting your country, your processes to do harm to you for their own end. And I'll tell you, Tommy, it's scary if we just simply sit back and are allowed to take issue and to fight our allies and to embrace those who, like a Trojan horse, want to dismantle our entire country.
So how do you stand on truth when there's an abundance of lies and half-truths, so much so that the lies and more so the half-truths almost appear to be fact? How do you continue to stand on that truth when you're in a tornado of lies, a tornado of half-truths, a tornado of inconsistency, right? And Eric, the fingers being pointed to you saying, now prove your truth. How do you stand on that?
So here's where we are. It's a huge question. We'll have to explore this again in another show. But we are now in the place of we're in trouble. We are in deep trouble right now. And the only thing that can save us is a real God and real relationships with one another. In other words, if we simply get all of our information through technology, what we know is that the most appealing thing and the most valuable thing is dirt and negativity, because the war that we're waging today is over not the time of people, but their attention. And so everybody is seeking to own our attention, because if you get enough of our attention, you get our beliefs, our values, and our support. And so CNN, Fox, man, these folks don't care about us. They don't really care about the truth. They care about the eyes watching them. And so they'll say and report anything that keeps our attention. And so if I don't know you, Tommy, then I keep watching things about you through this thing right here, then the deep fakes can put up a Tommy that says, I denounce America. I embrace whatever. A deep fake. Literally, we can create a Tommy Lewis and have him saying everything. But if I saw a Tommy Lewis deep fake on here talking crazy, I'd say that's not Tommy.
Right.
I know Tommy. Tommy would never say that. But without a relationship and with stereotypes and biases, it becomes easier for us to be tricked, hoodwinked, bamboozled. Those are the words that I would use for the American public if we're not careful. Bamboozled, hoodwinked, tricked, stupefied, treated as useful idiots. Those are all the things that are waiting for us if we don't establish stronger relationships with God and our faith, and if we don't get to know each other in a way that many of the principles of the Word of God call for us to do things like love our enemy, turn the other cheek, love is stronger than hate. All of those principles, Tommy, are principles that we're going to have to live by if we're going to survive, because we're in uncharted waters right now, and it's uncertain whether we're going to be able to come out of this. I believe that America is going to experience more pain before we get to seeing some daylight out of this. It's just too attractive, too appealing for those who are now have diabolical means to try to oppress and control.
So Eric unpacks a lot in that, and I appreciate you. I will challenge our community, as I would challenge myself and you, Eric, when we move from that macro level, high level, 36,000 feet above the earth level, and get into the micro and more local level. We can think about our own families, our own workplaces, our own communities. And when we are standing on truth and we hear a lie or half truth, I invite us to have courage to engage in that proximity. So don't shy away when the lies are happening, particularly about you, but to engage it. And when we engage, it doesn't always have to be hostile.
No.
It doesn't have to be violent, right? It doesn't have to be confrontational. We just engage it. It may be through questioning, right? Again, we're standing on truth. Someone else is lying about us or ours, right? Our home, our family, our community. Just start to question. Where do you get that from? Right? Again, I'm saying that because I need to put it into practice, because in our work, Eric, we work in the space of diversity, equity, inclusion, justice, accessibility, all of that. There's a lot of lies out there.
Bingo.
I'm not just talking about the television lies about what's happening around the world. I'm talking about the lies that are impacting my life. Where I know the truth that diversity is not divisive. It's not.
No.
Diversity, which we all have.
Inclusion.
Inclusion is not exclusion. And so when people are gaslighting.
I like that word. That applies here. Gaslighting.
And they're saying, here's what you think. I'm going to tell you what you saw. I'm going to tell you what you said. I'm going to tell you what you think. You have to stand on the truth and be courageous to say, time out.
That ain't true.
I didn't say that at all. What are you talking about? I didn't do that. Wait a minute. Where were you when I was there? Well, I wasn't there. I had heard from this person who told this person who told this person who actually put it up on a post, and then it was interpreted. And I'm just reading what happened. You're reading what happened. I'm telling you, I wasn't there. Stand on truth.
So let's look at where we are, and we're going to pick this back up next week. But right now, so we had the Supreme Court of the United States overturn Roe v. Wade, and people are all over the place, on all sides. I believe that just like God gave us choice, we give people choice, and they are they're responsible, accountable to God ultimately. And so that's what I believe about that. But let's look at, we overturned Roe v. Wade. The Supreme Court decided that women's bodies were not as complex as guns, because they won't make any laws around guns because they're too complex, but women's bodies somehow are not complex, so they could just make a ruling. But then that ruling has ramifications. And so what we saw this week was the Alabama Supreme Court sort of say that IVF, in vitro fertilization, is no longer legal. That as soon as that sperm and egg get combined, that's a baby. And so now all of those test tubes have got all these fertilized eggs are now babies. And so you could actually be found, to have done murder if you disrupt or, ship off or discard those embryos. And so, so you're literally taking freedoms away from moms and dads to try to plan to have children that really want to have babies, and this is one process that they could use, but not if you're going to make them responsible for all of those. I mean, it's just crazy. And now you see everybody distancing themselves, even on the right, distancing themselves from that overturn. But what we've seen, let's just look at what we've seen. When one conservative does something in one state, then every other state of conservatives copycats it.
Yep.
And they do the same thing. And so I was just thinking about today, I was in the grocery store and I was thinking about in vitro fertilization. I was thinking about, well, what would happen if we came up with just laws that impacted men? That you said to men, you no longer can use condoms because that interrupts the flow, the natural flow of God. You can't have any surgeries, to close off your tubes because that is against God's principles and laws. We would not stand for that. If you were interested in some of these things, why would you not make laws that have a greater impact on your gender if you weren't in a sexist and convenient way doing things that other people were going to have to monitor? I think that what the overreaches that are occurring right now are going to be a part of the solution to right the ship, because they're finally getting the attention of our people, because you're making it so we can't ignore you anymore. You're taking away people's freedoms and their rights.
At what point, though, Eric, at what point will these overreaches, which are becoming regular and abundant? So you got the Alabama Supreme Court. It may be, may go to the United States Supreme Court. I don't know. As you mentioned, you have states that are copycatting. Right. Not only this particular thing, but it could be
all the other bad laws, policies, ordinances, etc. We have a whole country of copycats, followers, and non-independent thinkers.
That's my mind. That's what I think.
We
have a bunch of non-independent thinkers. We have a bunch of group think.
Right. Exactly.
Right. Tribalistic.
Right.
Monolithic folks.
Right.
And so at what point will the straw break the camel's back?
Right.
And we've had enough.
That's good. So here's just a wonderful depiction of what we're up against. I encourage you to go take a look at the interview with Tommy Tuberville, Senator Tuberville out of Alabama. Used to be a great college football coach. Now he's just a useful idiot in Congress. He didn't even know what the three branches of government were. And so they asked him, hey, Senator Tuberville, what do you think about IVF? He said, well, I'm against it. I'm against it. I think I'm against it. They said, well, no, this is cuts off families' ability to have bigger families and children. Oh, well, I'm for that. I'm for that. I mean, that's where we are right now. That people without their party politics don't even know what they believe. They have to actually check in and say, hey, where are we supposed to stand? Huh? And so what I would say to you is that there's going to be a requirement for average people to be more informed and to know each other enough to care about each other. But we're living in a world that is increasingly allowing us to be comfortable living in isolation. What are those games called that they were trying to kill each other?
Yeah.
That movie. But that's where we are right now.
Yeah.
We're Hunter Games or whatever, something like that. But that's where we are that's where we're headed if we're not careful. That we just sit back and digitally make decisions on who should live, who should die. That seems morbid, but in a way, if we choose to continue to be ignorant and not care about what happens to you, then I think that we're going to deserve what we get. And I'm going to say to you, I'm going to make another prediction that, thank you, Ken, Hunger Games, that's it. I'm going to suggest to you that we have more pain that's coming because we are simplistically focused on ourselves, our own needs, and we don't really think much about what's happening outside of our doors. If we continue to do that, Tommy, the future is not going to be very bright for us. But I think that enough pain that you experience, I think it can help to right the ship. That's what I'm hoping and believing. And only God can end this thing. So I don't think that man is going to have the freedom to end this thing. But man certainly can create all kind of disruption and pain.
Eric, I still think that we have to respect and be responsible for our own civic responsibility.
Okay, I agree.
We have to register to vote, and we have to vote, right? So we still need to exercise that right and power.
Right.
That's one. Two, we have to own up and be accountable for our own actions. Again, just going from the macro level down to the micro level, it's what can I control and what's impacting me and my family,
right,
and my environment. So if we, including myself, if we stay silent or dormant or non-active, then the things that we're talking about, particularly the negative things, will continue to roll on and happen. We cannot and we do not have the luxury of sitting back and saying it will take care of itself. I would have never thought that this country and our world will be where we are today.
Right.
Coming through COVID when we were kumbaya.
Right.
We had a common hidden enemy.
The whole world was fighting that same enemy.
We were all together toward survival.
Right.
It was real. We were losing people. It was real. We had to quarantine. It was real that we were disrupted, our economy and all that good stuff.
Right.
That was all real. And now we came out of that and we left our mind back in COVID. We need to go back to the future. Literally. We have to go back to the future. Do not forget our past. If it's 1 month, 4 years or 5 years, or 400 years, don't allow any person, policy, or even a culture to usurp what's happened. So let us reframe that. We'll talk about that in another show as well.
So the last thing I'm gonna leave with you, and I want just food for thought. The mayor of Birmingham is encouraging Black athletes to choose colleges outside of Alabama, because the Senate there has begun to put in place laws that make DEI illegal in public institutions, colleges, and universities. And basically, they said that in the bill would bar public schools from affirming a divisive concept such as teaching slavery and racism are aligned with the foundational principles of the United States, and that fault, blame, or bias should be assigned to members of a race, color, And so basically they're saying that we stand against DEI because it put forth divisive concepts like racism was a part of the foundation of the United States. But all we have to do is look at what existed. It's not a principle. It's not a feeling. It's not, no, we know the founding fathers didn't intend. They didn't intend to call us, people of color 3/5 of a person. But that's what they did. So it doesn't matter what was the intent or how we want to sort of reconfigure history. We've had problems in this country with racism, sexism, heterosexism, all of those things. And it's about not what somebody wants to sort of recreate as your intent. We don't know anything about that. We ultimately, and America, it's not about America. America, the country, can't do anything. It's the people in the country that suggested that some of us needed to be enslaved based upon our race. That was the law of the land. So that those were racist laws that were and for women couldn't vote, the sexist laws that men were putting in place. I don't care what we might dramatize their thinking or sort of reconfigure history, rewrite history. There are negative things that have been a part of the founding of this country, and the lineage of that is the same lineage that's tied to the attacks on DEIB. It's the same thing. And so we have to resist our worst selves, and we have to embrace something that is closer to what God has designed. It's not about what America designed itself to be. It's ultimately going to be about the design that God has for all people to love each other and be seen as children of God. So we have come to the end of our conversation today, Tommy. Everybody might not have been on par with where we were, but these are critical thoughts. They're critical conversations that we've got to join into this somewhere, lest we be controlled by people outside of us that have no good intention for this country. Tommy, you got the last one.
Yeah, I want to say thank you again to our community for joining us again, sharing your thoughts, staying in tune with us, and continuing the conversation after the close of our show. We look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you for your time and be blessed. See you next week on Diversity Conversations. Take care.
Bye now. Take care of each other.